It's time to step into the Coming Out Lounge, a cool, safe space to be true to your sexual self. With your host, Rick Clemens. Rick has helped hundreds of people come out of the closet, and now each week he's bringing you cool insights for loving and accepting yourself, boosting your self-confidence, and living a guilt-free, purpose-filled life on the other side of the closet doors. Cuddle up with yourself and get ready for heartwarming coming out stories, ideas for living authentically, and tips for being fully self-expressed. Now here's your host, Coming Out Coach Rick.
Hey, closet dwellers and closet busters. It's time once again for the Coming Out Lounge. I'm your host, Rick Clemens, the Coming Out Coach. And today we're going to talk about being out, being you, and shifting the way you do this coming out script. And what do you need? Where do you need support? You know, one of the things that we all seem to need is we come out to be our truest selves, regardless of our sexual orientation. I want it to be just about the LGBTQ thing, but that's what we do a lot of talking about here on the Coming Out Lounge. But one of the things we need is a safe, welcoming space to truly be ourselves. And often that comes in the form of community and like-minded individuals. But too often, at least what I found in my world, we go into our own communities and we find that we don't fit in. And we start once again to play into, well, those kind of ugly expectations of other people, and we lose our individuality. And that's the thing we most passionately yearn for. We really want to be ourselves. So today I want to start to change those expectations so that we can be ourselves and we can enter into a community that feeds us in a really healthy manner. But probably you're asking, well, where do we find that? How do we do that? Well, it is a modern technology world, and today we're going to go find it on an app, of course. We're going to go talk to the founder of Be Out, which is a new app that's building a really cool community that can give each of you some space to be who you are and speak your mind and have some fun. Now, I know there's lots of apps out there. We all know about Grindr, Scruff, Tinder, all those great apps. But what I love about Be Out is it is really working towards creating a experience with a common ambition for everyone. And they're building this because they believe we need to support each other, inspiration, we need to laugh. We also need that social medium to truly embrace the LGBT community and encourage one another. So let's go explore this. Let's bring on Mark Willett. He's the co-founder and CEO of Be Out. And let's find out what he's doing to really help us draw together more as a community. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Rick.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited. I know the app is launched and you're just kind of a few weeks into it. I know that things are happening, but let's go back to before the app started getting developed. Tell me and the listeners why Be Out became that thing you wanted to bring to the world.
Well, you really set up the story really well, actually, in what you said earlier, because it really was this sense of a lack for a cultural epicenter for the LGBTQ community. And we really saw that, you know, when people are coming out, like you said, at young ages, you know, what are the offerings that we're giving them for community, especially online, which is where a lot of people are going to find like-minded individuals, and that the focus there is really purely on sex. And we're a sex-positive company as well. We have a full suite of dating and social media features that you would expect on any of the other sites like that you mentioned. But we wanted to really create a community, really build Be Out from the ground up with that in mind, for there to be something for everyone, for every interest, from every corner of our community, and for it to be a place for people to be their authentic selves, but also to participate in the community and speak their mind and participate in discussions and comment on our original content. We have a team of writers and contributors that are creating video and articles and doing interviews and really trying to bring expert discussion to our community while building the community and giving it a home.
Mm-hmm. So you brought up the word sex positive, and I know some of the listeners probably have heard that terminology, but I want to really make sure we kind of share what that really means. I know for me, sex positive means allowing people to be who they are in their sexuality and how they approach sexuality and sex and the activities of sex, just so that they feel comfortable. And I think this is something that, you know, you and I were kind of, you know, later in life guys, but I know when I was younger, this sex positive thing wasn't part of the culture, especially as a gay young man. It was like, okay, you can't even talk about this stuff. What do you want to do with the app to make a really sex positive community?
Well, like I said, we have all the features that you would expect in those other things that only do one thing, and that really that is to cater to hookup culture.
Yeah.
And none of our content or anything like that is, we're not trying to say that there's anything wrong with that. In fact, we support it, we welcome it. We have features that are dedicated to just that. If that's what you're looking for, we have features for it. But that if we're going to create a community, that it would have to be about more than that too, and that we would have this full spectrum of features for everyone to participate in anything that they could even possibly be interested in topic. But as far as specifically sex positive, I think it's really important not to sterilize a community or pretend that sex is bad or something that we should ever be ashamed of. And I think that that's one of our core values from the very beginning. But also that it's important for a community, especially one that is intrinsically not universally attracted to each other, as the LGBTQ community is. I think it's important that we talk to each other beyond just who's attracted to who. You know, I think the lesbian and the gay community and the transgender community have been really splintered, especially in recent years, and that we haven't really come together in a way that we did in, say, you know, the 80s even, when the lesbians and the transgender community really came to the defense of our community and the support of our community in a time when we were being turned away by our own government and our neighbors and our friends and families. And like I said, I think that we've lost some of that we could really stand to regain, especially in recent events with the political climate and the laws that are being passed and this legislation against the transgender community that's happening over and over in states all over the country. There's a lot of reason for our community to come together right now.
Got it. And I think you're onto something here that I've observed as I've been out on the speaking circuit, as there is still some splintering, and I think it's pretty prevalent still. I mean, we've got some unity. You know, we can all get behind certain organizations, whether it's HRC or, you know, PFLAG or any of those advocacy groups. But when it comes down to, okay, how do I embrace my lesbian sisters, or how do I embrace my transgender brothers and sisters, or how do I start to stand under the umbrella of queer, we tend to not, I don't know, again, it's just my perspective, but it seems like we tend to not align really easily when the opportunity to do that could begin to build bridges not only internal of our community, but external of our community. And I think that's where we fail sometimes, is we're not building the bridges within our own community, but yet we want the whole outside world to get on this bridge that we're trying to build. And sometimes they look at our community and go, well, wait, you're kind of splintered within your own your own communities.
I think a lot of that is messaging too, because, you know, we're just as diverse as the heterosexual community, as we come in all shapes and sizes and races and genders and backgrounds. We are just as diverse as anything else. So we come from a lot of varying opinion. There is no way we are ever going to all agree as a unified culture. You know, all LGBTs feel the same way about this. You know, you could look at almost any issue and you're going to find just as varying opinions.
Absolutely.
So we need to never think that that's never going to be an achievable goal.
Yep.
But what we need to focus on is the fact that conversation, it happens. It's not happening anywhere right now. The closest thing you might have is something like Facebook, but everyone's grandmother and boss is on Facebook. That's not the place for us to have our internal conversations within our own community.
And it sounds like that's what you're trying to achieve then with the Be Out app, is really setting
absolutely.
that platform.
Yeah, I would say that is our number one mission.
Yeah.
You know, we want people to have fun too. We have humor writers and entertainment and all sorts of things like that. But, you know, it's not all serious.
You're right. So let's truly nut this thing down. What makes you truly different then? And I know we've kind of alluded to it already, but I want to make it really clear for the listeners.
Yeah.
What makes your app, you know, set aside, you know, that standout app, so to speak, from the Grinders, the Scruff, the Tinders, the, you know, the Pride.coms, all these? What is it that you are doing differently that makes this much more comprehensive?
Well, a lot of apps that call themselves dating or social media apps really allow you to do two things: create a profile and talk to people one-on-one. Mm-hmm. We really focused on opening that communication from one-to-one to one-to-many. Mm-hmm. And that really comes true in its purest form and be out in our discussion section, mm-hmm. where any user can create a discussion, they can start a conversation, they can tag it with its topics, they can tag it by the location, so you can find conversations that are happening in your neighborhood or in the place you're about to go. Let's say you're about to travel to Chicago and you're looking for dinner, or you're looking for just, some people to hang out and go for drinks, not necessarily in a sexual atmosphere. You're looking to just explore Chicago and meet some people. There's really not a place for that to happen.
Yeah.
And in the discussion section, you could go and you can tag it in Chicago and you could say, hey, I'm looking for this, and people would be able to, you'd be able to access the community. You'd be able to access real people without having to find one person and message them and say, hey, where's a good place to go on Saturday night?
Right.
And we can talk about, you can talk about movies and you can talk about politics and anything and everything. Right. And that really is that opening up of the conversation to the community rather than just one-to-one is really, I think, one of the biggest differences.
Right. So I love this idea of the discussions because I know as a writer myself, and hopefully we'll soon be putting, you and I have talked about me putting some stuff on the app as well.
Absolutely.
What I find, and I'm probably going to shoot myself in the foot with this statement, but I don't really give a damn. So what I find frustrating about being a blogger writer is, yes, you can have a conversation, but it's very much... It is one-to-one, even though it can become one-to-many, depending on the comments that start to flow, But then when you're writing for 3 or 4 different, venues, and that's the only medium for you to have that conversation, there's something that gets lost. And I know when I do this on Facebook, if I post something out to my followers, then I get to start having the dialogue, and then, others can comment, and especially, through the political season, as we we watch debates and stuff, and I would be posting stuff on Facebook, and then I'd start, we'd start to have the dialogue. It's much more inviting to be able to have the dialogue than it to be just one-to-one. I think the one-to-many aspect of this is really cool. And I think within our own community, sometimes it's nice to have this, I don't know, kind of this medium where you can say what you want to say and know that there's still a little bit of safety in being able to do that. It's a little bit different than sitting, in a restaurant or a bar and starting to have these conversations and you get uncomfortable. I kind of like the medium of the barrier, so to speak, where you're a little bit protected through the app versus, okay, I really want to say something, but I don't feel comfortable doing this one-to-one, face-to-face with someone.
Yeah, and there's a way that we would say something to an all LGBT audience, and a way that we would have a discussion inside that circle that's very different from the way we would have that discussion, say, on Facebook.
Yes. Yep. Well, I mean, let's be real. I mean, I know for me, I don't understand the log cabin Republicans at all, but how I would position that on Facebook would be completely different than if I was in a safe, contained zone, like let's say your app, where I know I can say some things in that environment where it's going to be much better understood because there's some lingo we use in our community, so on and so forth. Whereas on Facebook, I got to remember, well, not only am I talking to my LGBTQ people, but there's also some of my straight friends, and I don't want them thinking I'm being an ass or a jerk in the way I'm saying stuff, because I can do this in another environment, and I may still be an ass or a jerk to some people, but they're going to understand the lingo I'm using and where it comes from.
Right. And the agony that you have to go through to carefully choose every single word for something that you're going to put on Facebook, because every single person is going to see it. And by the time you get something out, maybe you might as well not have, you're not really saying what you wanted to say in the first place.
Right. Exactly.
But let's talk about safety for a second, because that safety and authenticity is one of the other really things that is really important to us and that we made as a key part of Be Out. Yep. First of all of our profiles require faces. You have to have a face picture. You can also log in with Facebook, which adds to the authenticity, because Facebook inherently doesn't work if you're not authentic.
Yep.
And so those two things, and combined with our community guidelines and all sorts of features that support the authenticity, that becomes something that, you're having a conversation with real people and their faces. You're not having a conversation with someone whose picture is a landscape or a torso. Right. You're having a real conversation. And that's what Be Out is for. If you're not willing to have your face on there, then it might not be the community for you. This is for people who are willing to be themselves, be their authentic selves, and stand up and be a part of the community. And I think that there's a lot of people that are willing to do that. You can even look at some of the other apps that you mentioned, and there's a lot of faces on there. People are really willing to show their face everywhere now. But that's important. I think that if we're going to have this conversation and we're going to claim to raise the level of the bar in that conversation, then it has to be done in a place where people do feel safe, and that it feels well lit, and that you really feel like you're talking to real people.
Absolutely. And I think a good example of this is kind of what we do here on the podcast. There's a lot of vulnerability that comes with coming on to this podcast and being a guest and talking about things that we talk about. I know prior to us jumping on this podcast, we were talking about open relationships and stuff. And I'd like to use that as kind of an example of being able to talk about open relationships in an LGBTQ forum that is safe, where people are real and people are being hopefully genuine, but just like you just said, real faces, real people sort of thing. It's a completely different conversation than putting it out on Facebook, which I can guarantee you that would not be something that I would probably be putting out on Facebook, because there's a lot of different eyes on that. However, as soon as you get into a safe container, it becomes a whole different conversation. So I know I'm in a couple of groups on Facebook that it is a safe container, because they're only allowed to be in there if you happen to belong to, one of them is a formerly married gay dad's group. So all the guys in that group have been formerly married to heterosexual women, and the guys have come out of the closet and they all have kids. So we have that safe container. Those are the only guys allowed into that group. Yeah, there's always the possibility that somebody could slip through, but as soon as we figure that out, they're out and they're banned and so on and so forth. And it sounds like
it takes a lot of policing.
It does take a lot of policing. So speaking of that, what kind of policing safety stuff have you guys put into the app to, ensure that people can come into this safe container?
Well, first of all, like I said, we require faces. You can log in with Facebook. Second of all, we have community guidelines that people have to adhere to.
Yeah.
They're very reasonable. And then we also have a full reporting and a set of reporting and blocking features.
Got it.
So if language does come up, if things do come up, we're going to know where those reports are coming from. And people that are frequently flagged can be banned or banned permanently from the site. And what happens then is it's not the kind of place where you can just create a new profile and start all over.
Right. That's great. That's awesome, man. So give us some insights to, what you see for the long term on this. What would you like to see happen with Be Out? I know you're in the infancy stages, just released. What's the big picture look like for you?
Well, we do have some really, really big things coming up that I can't talk about right now, but that we do have some really exciting things
I was trying to get him to go. I thought, okay, how if I position this, he'll just kind of slip. But no, I knew you had some stuff, but I know there is some big plans ahead.
We do have some really big things coming around. We are available now. We're building the community. But down the road, one thing that I can mention that we do have plans for is that we are going to be shooting our own original series. We're going to have our own narrative series. We're going to be constantly building our community, constantly building our repertoire of contributors. We have some really, really amazing contributors like Drew Droege, Damon L. Jacobs, David Duran, who's a Condé Nast travel writer. We're going to be giving people really, really expert advice from all sorts of different corners of our community. And then as we grow, we're going to be rebuilding those communities in countries all over the world, one by one. And we're going to be finding the leaders of the LGBT community in those countries and having them create content for their community in their countries.
This is really important because what I've seen is my book has been out for, I guess almost 6 months now. And as I watch what happens here with the podcast too, the ability for someone to access this kind of support and help is so predominant in Asia, Russia, South America. Most of the people on a consistent basis who listen to the podcast and who have been downloading the book on Kindle versions have been coming from those areas of the world where, being LGBTQ is, against the law or can lead to death and all these sort of things. So I think it'll be really interesting for you guys as you watch this thing, step out of its diapers, so to speak, and begin to walk, to see where you start to get the subscribers, the downloads, all this sort of stuff, because I think you're going to find you're going to build a very rapid internet, not only in the U.S. market space. You're going to probably see a lot of different places that will surprise you where people are downloading. And then internationally, you'll go, oh, wow, this is kind of interesting, too, because I think you have a huge opportunity there to see the international segment grow really quickly.
That's the plan. And not really just for our benefit, but really for the global community. I think that you nailed it on the head that there's a lot of North American LGBT content that's accessed by people from all over the world because they're not able to find it anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And they're certainly not able to find community safely in some countries. And I think that eventually, expanding the Be Out community globally, we can help that conversation happen, help that community have a home that could become a global home for anyone to go to, regardless of how remote they are. I grew up in rural Nebraska. Mm-hmm. I was very removed from any sense of LGBT community growing up.
Right.
And I had to find it on AOL chat rooms, which it wasn't a community. It wasn't even safe, but that's where I found myself because I was desperate just to talk to anyone else who understood any sense of what I was going through. Yeah. And I think we can do better than that in 2016. Right. So that's what led us to Be Out.
No, I get it. And the thing that I find most powerful about this is, yes, we're seeing the world shift and change, and I'm going to come from a little bit of my own background and bias, but there's still an inordinate amount of people who are hiding, especially, I would say, older generations are hiding. That's the reason I continue to have a thriving business. But also, as much as we think there's acceptance and embracement and that our youth are definitely having an easier time of this,
there's a long way to go.
A long way to go. The more we can have things like Be Out and this podcast and access to, any online medium that, doles out really powerful, sex positive or LGBTQ positive content, the more we can begin to, ensure that people feel embraced and loved and know that there's community there for them to lean into when they need it most. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this begins to expand for you guys and the beautiful stuff you can do. So let me ask you this, Mark. What's in this for you personally? I mean, there's got to be a personal thing that really just is driving you to say, I wanted to do this.
I think, well, first of all, the real answer is that when I had the idea, it was such a lightning strike in my head that my entire life ever since that day was completely changed. And that I knew when I had the idea for Be Out that I had to pursue it no matter what to the end. So getting this done and getting it released is a personal triumph of mine. Mm-hmm. I'm really, really proud of it. I'm really happy to do it. And if I benefit personally from it at all in my life, I will most benefit from knowing that it did something good for the community and that I put a good chunk of my life and effort into putting something together that I thought was my best guess at something that would do something really good for this community.
Mm-hmm. And I think when we can operate from that space and we realize, yes, we want to give back, which I think many of us who do any of this kind of work, it's how can I give back? How can I make a difference? How can I implement something that wasn't there when I went through this journey? Then we get to see lives get changed. Every time I get behind the microphone here, one of the things I say to myself before I power on and, then hook in the guests and everything is just use me. Use me in whatever way I'm meant to be used here. I don't have any script. I mean, you as a guest know there's been no scripting that we've done for this today. and that it's just use me in the way that I'm meant to be used so that I can impact a life. And if I only got one download out of a show, I'd be like, okay, that one person, something happened for them that they wanted to download this. I'm fortunate that's not what it is because, if it was just one download a show, eventually I'd go, okay, this is not worth doing. But in a way, it is worth doing. You know, it's worth putting something out there. And I know as CEO of the organization for Be Out, yes, you're going to have to look at that piece too of, okay, well, how many apps are getting downloaded and, you know, implemented and all this stuff. And, you know, then you've got the whole content piece and how many people can we bring on. But it sounds like for you, it's your own personal life mission too, to do something really powerful for the community.
It absolutely is. And it wasn't my life mission until I had this idea. It just was something that sort of I had slumdog millionaired myself to this point, and all of a sudden everything I'd ever done in my life, kind of all these people that I had met before, and I started harnessing all these people together, and next thing you know, well, not next thing you know, a couple years later,
yes,
we're at this point.
Yeah, let's be realistic entrepreneurs here. This stuff, rarely does this stuff happen overnight. Any of you that are listening to us, take it from two guys who've been doing this. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's so funny. I mean, a labor of love.
I wasn't even young and naive. I was in my early 30s, and I called my parents, and I was like, you know, I think we could have this out in like 6 months. I think that, you know, we could get really going on this. And it's like, who was I thinking?
Yeah, this stuff definitely takes more. So as it's launching and everything, I know you're bringing on really fantastic content. You got some good stuff going on. How will you know, have you kind of thought of this? How will you know for you and maybe for the organization when you feel like this thing is a success?
Well, I think, the key performance indicator of any social network is the number of users,
right?
And daily active users. You want people to download it and use it, but you want people to like it, and you want to design it so that people enjoy using it and that it actually serves its purpose, which will help bring them back and help build the community because it relies on that.
Right.
So I don't know, let's get 10 million users.
All right. Okay, you heard it there. He won't be successful until he has 10 million users. There's a big, bold, hairy, audacious goal right there. But no, I love this because I think this is something that, and I'm going to bring this back to like a coming out conversation because I think it's an interesting tie-in. As an entrepreneur, you have to understand, what does success mean? And so many entrepreneurs don't really define that. They get this idea, they want this, and then it's like, okay, so great, you're going to do this. How will you know when you've been successful? And
success is in the journey.
It is in the journey. So the tie-in back to the coming out journey itself is, how will you know when you've successfully come out? Well, it's when you know that you're comfortable in your journey. And I think so many of us don't realize coming out is only the beginning, so to speak, of the journey. Yeah. Because we're going to keep doing this. We're going to keep coming out. We're going to keep being challenged to be who we are. We're going to be blindsided by other coming out journeys that happen once we come out. And that may mean that, you come out of the closet and then suddenly you're like, okay, well, that put me in a space of being really authentic. And then one day you're walking into your office and you go, and I really fucking hate this job too. So now I got to come out about that. I don't really want to be here. I've never really wanted to be here. But because you have the energy around this to have done this beautiful coming out journey of who you are and your sexual orientation or your gender identity, other things are going to shift. And that's why I wanted to tie this back to what you said about being really, truly aligned with what's the end goal. Doesn't mean you have to be completely stuck with that's the only way I'll know, but having a goal around your coming out journey of, okay, how will I know I'm content, and knowing who I am is a really big piece of this. I believe this journey is just knowing, A, it's a journey, but knowing there will be some milestones. One of those milestones for me was when I knew I could just lay my head down at night and get a good night's sleep. I wasn't tossing and turning going, who am I? Why am I... what is this all about? Why am I still lying? Why am I not being who I am? And I think these are the things that many people who will start to literally download and tap on the app, so to speak, hopefully this is what they'll start to find for themselves as a community and a beautiful space to start to embrace and have fun, take the journey, do some things that will really help them be out and be who they are.
Not a lot of people at a lot of points in their life are able to find that level of personal peace. Mm-hmm. It's that you have to keep chasing it. You have to keep chasing your own peace where, like you said, you can lay your head down at the end of the day and close your eyes and take a deep breath and be completely comfortable with who you are.
Yeah.
in all its forms.
I'm glad you said that, Mark, because I think this is kind of a false sense of security that we often create for ourselves. And I know I kind of set it up that way to some degree. I don't want anybody to think that, I'm always going to bed completely at peace, because no, you don't. But once you've done it, you kind of know, okay, how does that look? How does that feel? So that as you move through the journey of life, then you can go, okay, here's where I'm out of alignment with my values. Here's what's going on again. And I think the coming out journey, and when I talk about this, in front of an audience, or I guess I'm doing it right now, even in front of this audience, I think the greatest lesson my coming out journey taught me was, in so many aspects of our lives, we will continue to come out. And I don't just mean the LGBTQ, I'm gay sort of stuff. I mean I'm coming out to say, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in this relationship. Or no, that isn't working for me. And these things that we come out to, our journey coming out of the closet, yes, for some of us, it's really hard. And for some of it's a big challenge. And for others of us, it was a cakewalk. But in that journey, whether it was the cakewalk or really hard, look at what that gave you so that the next coming out thing you have or are invited to go through. I hate to say you have to go through, because I think we're invited to go through these things to help us grow. You can lean back into, okay, when I went through my own coming out journey, here's what happened. How can I take what I learned through that experience and now apply it to where I am right now?
Yeah, I call my own coming out experience a gift a lot in my life. I've called it that because it was an opportunity for me to take a look at my life in a way that was maybe different of what was traditionally expected. And I got to look at my life, fortunately, from a young age with that perspective. And that's really helped a lot in my life, actually, is, being able to accept the fact that I might be different in ways, and not always just my sexuality or my orientation or my gender, but just in what I liked. When I was very young, I was a follower. And if someone said, I like ice cream, I said, I like ice cream too. That's a bad example, but you know what I mean? Yeah. And one of my friends actually just sat me down and she was like, you can't just always agree with people. Like, then you have no personality. And that was a big eye opener for me. And I think that's a really important lesson that I think sometimes we forget when we put on all those masks.
Yeah. It's interesting. My husband and I were having a somewhat similar conversation a few weeks ago. And he said, so if you had to go back to work, what would be the thing that would be hardest? And I said, my solidarity. I love being in my home office, being alone, doing what I do. And then the moments that I get to have the interactions, like this is one of those interactions, when I get to be on a podcast, or when I step out and I'm called to go be on stage, or when I write an article and I get to share that with the world. I'm not a recluse, and I'm not one of those weird people like, no, I don't like being around people. I love being around people. I realized once the opportunity was offered to me to work from home years ago, so back in 2003, to start the journey of working from home for the company that I worked for. And then that journey continued to expand from 1 or 2 days a week to it finally got to like 4 days a week, to some weeks I didn't go in at all. I realized how much that was feeding my soul, that I needed that quiet time to just be with me. And even when my husband started working from home and we were working in the same space, he wasn't here all the time, I realized how much I enjoyed that interaction. But then when I was alone, I still really, it fed my soul to have that time to be quiet. So I think I would just die. I mean, no, I wouldn't die, but it would be very hard for me to go back into an environment where I had to show up and be around, tons of people and activity all the time. And these are the things that really understanding your journey of who you are, how you want to be in the world, and saying, I'm okay. This is really good. This is who I am. And I know that's an extreme example, but I think sometimes we have to share these kind of examples so that somebody can take those things, whether it be you like ice cream or you don't like ice cream, or you want to work alone or not work alone, to help other people go, okay, I'm in this journey. Wow, he just said something, or, Mark just said something that, really resonated with me, and I need to go explore that. And I think that's the biggest piece. And it sounds like that will be the biggest pieces, too, of what you're trying to create with the app and the community, is giving people the opportunity to have these interactions in a way that will hopefully inspire and create dialogue and build the community where people can feel safe to say, yeah, this is what I'm feeling too.
Yeah. And sometimes it helps to take a little personal leap of faith, too, when you're making those decisions.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine that building this app has taken more than just a little leap of faith, right?
Right, but I was just equating you deciding to work from home and pursue this as well.
Yeah, those huge leap of faith.
Right, and not just the personal inner turmoil, but that leap of faith to say, okay, I'm just going to do it, and it's not going to be easy, but this is what's going to make me happy.
Right.
And that's the point.
If I was being really honest, the thing I'd hate the most is, damn it, I have to put on real clothes again. That would be the hardest part. Because it's like, even through the winter, it's like, it's rare that I wear anything but shorts and T-shirts, and wintertime I'll have a pair of sweats on and a T-shirt. It's like, really? And it's so funny, my body, I can tell. I mean, when I have to go somewhere and I have to speak, and I shouldn't say have to, when I get to speak, it's like there's a whole routine that I have to go through. It's like, okay, I don't wear whatever shirt I'm going to wear to speak. I wear a T-shirt, and I get to the venue early, and I go in and I make sure that my body gets acclimated to, the temperature, and then finally the last thing I do before I go on stage is literally I throw the T-shirt off, put the shirt on that I'm going to speak in. As soon as I come off stage, I really want to rip the other shirt off because I'm like, I want my T-shirt back on. That's where I feel most comfortable. It's interesting to see ourselves in these places. And, even that little routine I do with going on stage, there's a piece of my coming out journey in that, because I always equate the shirt change to how I came out and how I got rid of the old clothes of who Rick was, and I put on the new clothes of who I'm meant to be. That's actually one of the thought process that I go through before I step out on stage each and every time. So
that's very cool. You have a lot of inner pep talks.
Oh, yeah. I've got a whole football stadium of pep talkers talking to me. So
that's good.
Yeah.
It's good to have support.
Yes, it is. So as we get ready to wind up here, if there's anything we haven't covered on the app, is there anything you'd like to share about it and tell people where they can get it? Obviously, they go to the App Store, I would assume, right?
Yeah, it's Be Out, which is the letter B, O-U-T.
Mm-hmm.
We're available on the App Store. We're going to be available on Google Play in, I would say, the next 6 months. That'll be around the corner.
Awesome.
Yeah, we can't wait to see you there. Come, the first month of premium content is free, but there's also a complete free version. So, you're in no way required to pay to use the app. We designed it with the idea of giving you for free what other people make you pay for.
There you go.
And then on top of it, we have our premium side, which is half the cost of, it's the price of a large cold brew.
There you go.
So,
there you go. Awesome.
There you go.
So one of the things I always ask before we wind up, and I have every guest share, is, and it can come from your own coming out perspective or just a life lesson you've learned. But, a lot of the people who are listening are people who are in the journey, not yet started the journey of coming out. Maybe they're in a coming out journey that's not related to the LGBTQ experience, but they're stuck somewhere in their life and they're like, yeah, I got to come out. If you could leave just a piece of, Mark wisdom on how to get through some of these things, whether it's coming out of the closet or just moving through life, what would you like to leave the listeners with?
Follow your gut and ask for advice.
Wow. And we didn't rehearse that, so he came to that really quickly. So you can tell. I always love it when a guest comes right to it, because it's then this is truly something that they believe in and they buy into for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to follow your gut. You always know. I thought of that when you said relationship, because, every relationship I've been in that's eventually ended, you just know that it's over, and we just linger and we don't follow our guts, or we miss out on someone that we, could have been with or didn't. You will always regret not following your gut. Yeah. If you follow your gut and something goes wrong and you learn a lesson, you were meant to learn that lesson. But you will regret it if you don't follow your gut. But you also have to listen and ask for advice.
Yeah. And I think the toughest piece is that, I think they're both tough. And if I had to choose between which is tougher, to follow your gut or listen to your intuition or to ask for the advice, it would be a tough one to call. But I think they both go hand in hand, and sometimes you're going to get the advice. Oftentimes people show up to my work and they're like, tell me what to do. I'm like, well, I could tell you what to do, and I will share pieces of, what other people have done, but you got to come to what you feel is true for you. It may be the same thing, but I don't want to be that guy that says, okay, yeah, here's how you do this. And then you come back and go, well, that didn't work, so you're kind of a dumbass, Rick. Well, no, I don't want to be that dumbass. I want you to be the person who discovers this for yourself.
But sometimes advice will influence your gut. And sometimes the advice is listen to your gut.
Exactly. And sometimes the advice will be the thing that it sparks your intuition and your gut feeling. It may be laying there latent, and then suddenly what somebody gives as advice is the thing that actually lights it up and says, oh, okay, that's what I was supposed to hear. So
yeah. People that follow their gut unflinchingly, I think that's living life a little reckless.
Yeah. But I think you need to listen to it and you need to take it. In fact, I just did this a couple of times with clients in the past week of what is your instinct telling you? What is your gut telling you right now? And how can you listen to that? And how can you hold what you're hearing and then make the decision? You know, and it's pretty powerful when you do that. So, all right, my friend. Well, I am so glad we had this opportunity. I'm excited to see what happens with the Be Out app and what happens for you guys that are heading up this beautiful project. And we will have everything on the show page for anyone to download it, get it. And I encourage each and every one of you to get out there and just see what Mark's created. So,
thanks, Rick. I really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. And for those of you who are listening, go to that page, download the app, and we'd love to hear from you about your experience with it. And for now, we're going to call that a wrap, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon. Hey, Closet Dwellers and Coming Out Lounge listeners. I wanted to invite you to check something out. You know, for all the years that I've been a coming out coach, one thing I've learned is sometimes people come to do the work with me and they only need a little bit of help to get over something very particular and very important to them. It could be reconciling their religion and sexuality. Maybe it's learning how to have the difficult conversations where they say, I'm gay. Possibly it could be, oh my God, I'm out of the closet, but now how do I do this same-sex dating and mating sort of thing? Well, what I can tell you is throughout the years, there are common things that show up over and over and over again. And what I've heard most from my clients and listeners of the podcast is, I want a way to work with you just on these particular subjects. Yay! I am so excited because I've taken the action and I've made this possible. So how do you find out about these particular programs? You go to thecomingoutcoach.com, or if you're on the show page right now listening to the podcast or have just listened to the podcast, over to the right-hand side of the podcast description, everything is an icon that says one-on-one coaching sessions. Click on that button, you'll be taken to a page that describes each of the different 9 sessions I'm offering. They are one-on-one sessions that we can do via phone, Skype, or even FaceTime. They're very action-oriented. We go right to the topic that you want to talk about. And each of these sessions also includes a copy of my book, Frankly, My Dear, I'm Gay. So what more could you ask for? You get me for 90 minutes devoted to you, plus my book. So go check it out. See if there's something that could help you as you step out, step up, and step in to living your powerful truth. Take care. I'm Rick Clemens, the Coming Out Coach. I look forward to working with you.
You've just experienced the Coming Out Lounge. Go online to www.comingoutlounge.com to learn more and tune in again next week for more stories and tips for being true to yourself.